The quadratic formula is our third solution strategy for solving a quadratic equation. The quadratic formula is used when the zero product property can't be used because the quadratic expression cannot be factored. And it's used when square roots can't be used because we have that bx term. So you can't use the square root strategy if there's a bx term in terms of ax squared plus bx. You can't use the zero product property if you cannot factor the quadratic expression, but you can always use the quadratic formula. You just need to make sure that the expression is equal to 0. So if, for example, we had 4x squared plus 7x equals 15, we could use the quadratic formula. We would just need to subtract 15 from both sides to make sure that our quadratic equation has an equal to 0 component. Quadratic equation needs to be memorized, and it requires a lot of precision so that you don't make mistakes. So we have our equation of the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Our a is 4, our b is 7, and our c is negative 15. Just plug that into the formula to find the two x values that make this equation true. So x equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And you can sing it too, Pop Goes the Weasel. Okay, so negative 7 plus or minus the square root of 7 squared minus 4 times negative 15 all over 2 times 4. That gives me negative 7 plus or minus the square root of 49 minus 4 times 15. Let's see what that is. Well, 4 times 15 is negative 6. 4 times negative 15 is negative 60. Negative 60 times negative 4 is 240. It's highly suggested that you just plug this whole expression right here into a calculator into a graphing calculator or a scientific calculator that does the proper order of operations, because it's really common for students to end up subtracting 240 here, not noticing we have a negative and a negative. So unless you're super confident with your integer skills, I would just plug 7 squared minus 4 times negative 15 into your calculator, all over 8. So this step is not actually really recommended. I would suggest that you go from here to square root of 289. So this is the first step that you really need to show me. And then we have, a perfect square under the square root. So we have negative 7. I think that is 17. Let me check. 17 times 17. Yep. So negative 7 plus or minus 17 over 8. That gives me two answers. Negative 7 plus 17 over 8 and negative 7 minus 17 over 8. Negative 7 plus 17 is 10 divided by 8, which is 1 2/8, which is 1.25. And then negative 7 minus 17 is negative 24 divided by 8, which is just negative 3. That gives me my two solutions to this equation. If I were to plug in 1.25 or 1 25/100 into this equation, I would get 0. And if I were to plug in 3, I would also get 0. So each of these examples, I'm just going to first identify my A, my B, and my C. And I'm going to plug them into this equation. Opposite of B plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4 times A times C all over 2A. Again, I'm suggesting that you go straight from here to plugging that whole thing in your calculator, which is going to be 25 plus 72 is 97, I hope, all over 4. And then use your calculator to square root that. Let me check. Let me see what the square root of 97 is. To turn my phone so that I get that square root. Square root of 97 is an irrational number that we are going to round to the hundredths place value. So -5 plus or minus 9.85 divided by 4. So this has to be rounded. You could also put that square root of 97 into a graphing calculator to get a more precise value. So we have two values, -5 plus 9.85 divided by 4, and -5 minus 9.85 divided by 4. So -5 plus 9.85 is going to be 4.85 divided by 4. This is very unpleasant with a cell phone calculator, which is about 1.21. -5 minus 9.85 is -14.85 divided by 4, which is about -3.71. Again, generally two solutions. If when you evaluate this formula for your A, B, and C, you get a negative number under the square root, you cannot take the square root of a negative number, and you would write no solution. If b squared minus 4ac, that's called the discriminant, if that equals 0, square root of 0 is 0, and you're only going to have one solution to your equation. I'm not going to solve this one, but I'm just going to point out it doesn't equal 0, so before you start, you need to add 7x to both sides. 3x squared plus 7x plus 4 equals 0. And then you use the quadratic formula. So for both the quadratic formula and the zero product property, or solving by factoring, your quadratic expression on the left-hand side of your equation has to equal 0. If it doesn't, transform in order to equal 0 before you begin.